online. There's a PDF you can download from Sturf, and it covers all about golf clubs that have got them in use, and what they're finding, how it's comparing in quality of cut, effect on weeds, which is mixed. Some people say you get more, some people say you get less. Because it's going out and cutting consistently, it's in some areas it's not bad. It actually improves the quality. In other areas, as I say, I think the jury's out a bit. You can see this particular club. I reckon he's got about 50 of them there, so that's a massive investment. But they do a huge amount of maintenance, and this is just the first generation. In future, I think they definitely are speaking to Husqvarna. They're coming with GPS, and obviously you'll be able to link them into things like, hopefully, how fast your grass is growing, so they'll go and cut more if the growth is more. You can already link them into your Google app, so you can tell it not to cut a certain day, or not to cut if the weather says it's raining, not to bother cutting. So it's a really interesting technology. At this stage, I don't see it replacing people, but I do see it allowing you to task these to do an area, and then you can get on and prioritize. So that's one area that I just wanted to touch on, because I'm very new to it. So like me, I'm just finding my way around it. Sounds like we've got a younger member of the audience there, which is great. So kind of moving on to some of the other remote applications on a golf course. Probably the one we're most familiar with is irrigation, where you have an app on your phone or your PC. It streams straight to a server, to a network card controller, and then it hopefully turns your irrigation on. And that for me is my first experience of, where we have a remote application where you don't have to be on the golf course to operate the irrigation. You can set your program, you can set your intervals, and when you want it irrigating, what time, what day of the week, and off it goes. And for me, that's been my first experience with it, but I think this whole area is growing significantly. So I was going to show you some of the new technology, remote technology that's coming in, specifically on the area of weather stations, because for me, we get asked more and more questions about the weather. How much rain have we had a frost delay, blah, blah. And I think weather stations should become an integral part of golf courses. So I just wanted to kick off really by talking about a standard weather station setup, and then show you some of the new advances that are coming in. I work with Davis weather stations from the States. I do it because I've got a great local distributor here in the UK, ProData. They're brilliant, and they've really helped me adapt Davis weather stations to do the work I'm doing. So this would be a sort of standard Davis Vantage Pro, which is their normal model used on a golf course. And what you should be doing if you have one is sitting at 1.5 to 2 meters off the ground. You'll have your normal anemometer, which measures wind speed direction. Often you'll see these advertised on the web, and if you see one cheaper than the rest, first thing to do is check it's got a solar radiation sensor, which is, can't quite see it in the picture, but it's a little black sensor, sits by the rain gauge. It actually costs about 250 quid on its own. And if you see one that's cheap, it's normally because it hasn't got one of these. And if you want to get ET readings from your weather station, you have to have a solar radiation sensor. So just be aware of that, the full package is normally a bit more expensive, but it allows you to calculate ET, or it calculates ET. And if it hasn't got that, it won't. Rain gauge is standard. They've got these little wire spikes on them, which are supposed to stop birds landing on them and, to be blunt, crapping into your weather station. In my experience, starlings are not fazed by them at all. You have all of these things work on a solar transmitter with a battery backup. We have a temperature humidity sensor. That's this fin. It's sat in this finned area below weather station. And then this particular one has a transmitter that sends all the data on 3G and 4G. And I'll explain that in a bit, because that's not the normal way. So that's a standard Davis weather station. Over the last year, in fact, this year, or up until this year, if you had one of these, it normally sends the data to a console that would sit in your office. There's a computer program you can get as well, but it's a bit clumsy. But that was really, it was pretty limited, you know, the output you got with it. This year, Davis introduced what's called a WeatherLink hub, which is a wireless hub that sits in your office. It connects to your Wi-Fi, and then that sends the data straight up to a server in the cloud. And that server then streams the information to a PC or to your phone. And you've got Davis have got a WeatherLink app, a WeatherLink app that allows you to access all the data from that weather station remotely, either on your phone or on your PC. So that's only just appeared, and for me, it's much more functional. It's much easier to get the data. You can be anywhere, and in fact, my other half is always cursing me because I'm flicking up different weather stations to look at how much it's raining and what the temperature is and whatever. But it's a really, really clever system, and it's not a huge amount of money. You know, you're talking probably another €200 to update this to get a wireless hub connected to your standard Davis. So that's just appeared. That's literally this spring. They allowed you to stream data up to a wireless server, and if you've got the app on your phone, you can quickly bring up all the stats. This is for the London Golf Club, one of the golf clubs that have this setup, so you can see your normal stats. You know, particularly if you're looking at, right, you're getting out of bed and thinking, I'm thinking it's going to be a good spray day. Well, this one would be an extremely good spray day. So you get all the information, obviously how much rain, year to date, everything. And if you, in this case, he's got some additional sensors which give him leaf moisture and stuff like that, which I'll talk to you about. So all of that is just a flick of the page on your phone. And, you know, if you've got a member saying, why is the course closed? You can quickly say, yeah, well, we've had 41 mils so far. And that's why the course is closed. So go away. So that's a little bit about the wireless setup. In agriculture, Davis have added an additional setup, and I actually think it's got some really good applications for golf courses. And I'm actually using it on a site maintaining. So what you've actually got here is a little satellite system, which we call a node. It connects to your weather station like that. And in that weather station, instead of having a wireless setup, it's actually got a little SIM card sitting in the transmitter. And that means that all the information goes to the cloud over the 4G network. And then just like before, it goes to your laptop or your phone. Now, one of the big advantages of this setup is you don't have to have wireless. So you don't have to have your weather station connected to a hub, to your own wireless network. And the big advantage for me is, you know, a lot of golf courses with wireless, with their own wireless, particularly some of the bigger ones, they'll have an IT department that don't want anything else connecting into it because of security issues and whatever. Our company are no different. And having this setup means you don't even have to interfere with the wireless setup of your facility. Everything goes over 4G. So the first thing is you don't need wireless, which is brilliant. And hopefully you've got a reasonably good 4G network. That node can sit up to 300 meters away from your weather station. And I'm going to explain why having a node is really, really cool, and why in the future I think it's going to be a big advantage for golf courses. Because the reality is a lot of maintenance facilities aren't necessarily the best place to stick a weather station. But often if you're trying to link in with your Wi-Fi, which is, if you have it down your sheds or in your maintenance facility, it means you have to put your weather station near your shed or your facility, whereas with this setup, you don't. So it's got some real big advantages. The fact that it doesn't need wireless, and the fact that this node allows you to move it about 300 meters away. In agriculture, you know, I mentioned this setup was developed for agriculture, and the reason it was developed is because obviously farms are huge, and often you have, you know, in this situation, you have a gradient on the farm, and you're trying to find, you're obviously going to have different climatic conditions. And what's really clever about these nodes is they speak to each other. So in this setup, one node sends the information to another, and then to the transmitter, and then to your phone. So all of these are linked. All of these can be 300 meters away from each other on a standard setting. So basically you can network your whole farm just by sticking these nodes around. And not only that, but if you equip your transmitter or your node with an aerial, which costs about 120 quid, it allows you to massively extend the range of your nodes. So if you put an aerial on the node and the transmitter, you could actually sight that node 1.5 to 2.5 kilometers away, and you'd still pick up weather data. So in a farming situation, this diagram shows if you had 2 nodes without an aerial, you can cover nearly 3,000 hectares and pull in data from sighting your nodes anywhere within that area. If you put big aerials on them, well, they're actually quite small, but they're long range aerials. Those nodes can be 3 kilometers apart from the central transmitter, and that will allow that farmer to cover nearly 3,000 hectares. So it's real groundbreaking. And the thing I like about it is that it allows, from a golf course or sports pitch point of view, it allows you to have flexibility where you site your weather station. Now, that node isn't just sending data. You can put 4 sensors onto that node. So in a way, if you wanted, you could just have a transmitter by your shed, and you could stick that node 300 meters away, and you could bolt on 4 sensors to it. So that node then could become a mini weather station. So here's one I've got, and what I've got is a temperature humidity sensor at ground height. I've got 2 soil moisture sensors that are buried 25 mil down. These are cabled. You have a 5-meter cable, so they're buried just an inch down, and one's 5 meters one way, one's 5 meters the other way. And I've also got a leaf moisture sensor. So there's my 4 sensors, and all that data goes into this node, and then it's sent straight to my central weather station, and I get my extra data. But that, in essence, if you wanted, you could stick a anemometer on there, a rain gauge, temperature humidity sensor, solar radiation sensor, and that would be your weather station. And your transmitter would sit by your shed. That could sit 300 meters away, or you stick an aerial on and it could sit 2.5 kilometers away. And wouldn't touch wireless network, all goes over the 4G network. So that's really cool. Just to show you a little bit about some of the sensors, this leaf moisture sensor, you can see, you know, this is a pretty heavy dewy morning, and the sensor has water droplets on it, dew droplets, and you have all these lines which are electrodes, and as the water sits on them, it completes a current and it sends a measurement back to the weather station. So if it's if the reading's 0, that means that leaf weather moisture sensor is dry. In this case, it's totally saturated, and that would give a reading. The maximum reading is 15. I found it really good for showing dew and how dew forms and when it forms. I've also found it really good for frost, because when that water freezes on there, you don't get a reading. So all of a sudden, you can see if your reading drops around dawn or just before dawn, you can see that you've got a frost. So I don't need to go to that area to know it's frozen, and I needn't bother turning up with the mower. So it's really good, really clever. And again, the thing I like about Davis is they're not silly money. You know, that sensor is about 120 euro, and it just bolts onto your standard setup. Just to show you some of the output, I won't go into all of this because some of it's self-explanatory, but all the information in the blue box comes off my standard Davis weather station. So the normal stuff you're used to seeing: temperature, humidity, moisture, rainfall, ET, the lot, wind direction, speed, and whatever. And then ET for me, you know, from an irrigation perspective, is absolutely vital. You know, it's all very well going out with the soil moisture meter, but and measuring and saying you've got 22% of water in your root zone at 60 mil. Well, the reality is most of the bit that's most important is above that, because most of your organic matter that's the area that's going to dry out quickest, and that sits in the top 25 mil typically. The majority does. And in this case, we can see what's going on from a soil moisture point of view at 25 mil, but we can see the area that's going to impact it quickest from a drying out point of view. So in the blue is from the weather station, in the red is actually from that little node. So I've got my two soil moisture sensors telling me what the moisture level is at 25 mil, what the soil temperature is. And I've got my leaf moisture sensor telling me that I've got a heavy dewy morning, or in this case, it's 8 o'clock at night and it's already saturated. So I've got a heavy dew. So it's absolutely fantastic. Now you might say, well, that's overkill for me, but if I'm looking to remotely run an area, that gives me all the information I need to make decisions on dew control, cutting, growth, and above all, irrigation. One of the most important things is where you put your weather station, and of course you've got golf, and you've got to put it in an area that's reasonably safe from a secure point of view. You also need to think about maintenance applications, as this video shows you. That was me protecting our weather station from being top dressed because it was right in the line of fire. But on a serious note, you know, the ability now to have the information over 4G network, not rely on wireless, and have these really long ranges now to site your nodes and your weather station means you've got a lot more flexibility. And above all, if you want to get extra information from another area of the golf course, you can just bolt on the node. You don't have to buy everything straight off. So it's kind of cool. Just to show you, you know, some use of that data from those sensors. This is in early November. I was saying to Damien that November for us was took the place of October. Normally October's our worst Microdochium fusarium month, but this year November's just been brutal. And this was a period just at the beginning of November, and the blue is the moisture forming on the leaf moisture sensor. So remember I said 15 is saturated. So if it's right up here, you know it's totally wet. So we had a heavy dew on the 5th, the 6th and 7th was quite windy. So the dew evaporated quite quickly, actually had a bit of rain. But when we came to the evening of the 7th, the dew started actually forming from 3 o'clock in the afternoon. By midnight, it was totally saturated, sat all the way through to the next morning. And if, of course, even if you'd have been in and taking the dew off, it would have reformed again right through till midday. There was probably only 2 hours when the conditions weren't right for dew formation, and then it began to form again. Just to create the perfect storm, this is the the air temperature, and you can see we got a massive increase in air temperature, and it sat during that time when the leaf was wet. The air temperature was above 10 degrees all through the night, peaking at just under 14 degrees through the day and night. And then just the final nail in the coffin of microdocium, we had an increase in humidity, so it sat at 95%. So that period there, the plant leaf was wet nearly continually for 48 hours. We had high air temperature, very high humidity, and that represented really high disease pressure. So typically we went from a situation like this, where you could see microdocium. This had a fungicide on. So this was halfway through the period of fungicidal control. I was looking at that thinking, yeah, well, okay, it's just about holding it. That was 48 hours later. And I won't tell you my reaction. I was quite upset. But you can see the difference in microdocium formation. That had the dew taken off first thing, but the dew just reformed straight after during the morning and all through the day, and then the next 2 nights. So, and it's dew that's the big driver for microdocium, but also for things like red thread, dollar spot. Just to sort of finish off on the sensors, you know, I've talked about weather stations and how the sensors in this case are cabled and connected. Well, you know, the sort of next generation are remote sensors, and one of them we've been looking at, and you may have heard of, these designed in Finland. These are called Soil Scouts, and they measure soil moisture, temperature, and salinity. They hook up to a wireless hub, and then that information is sent straight to the cloud. So you take a hole cutter, you bury your wireless sensor, and then it sends the information to the hub, up to the server, and then you pick it up, a bit like the weather station, either on your phone, on an app, or on your PC. Really easy to configure, to stick in, and you can bury them at any depth. And as I say, you get a continuous readout. So this is a case where one sensor, this is from September through to late November, early December, it's showing the moisture. This is a heavy clay soil, the soil temperature, and then the salinity. Now, salinity is an often quoted thing. You know, people talk about fertilizer salts and how they affect soil microbes, or in this case, maybe how they don't affect soil microbes, because the reality is so far that if you have a good grass cover, we're not seeing a lot of buildup of salinity in the ground. Now, if you're on a site maybe where you get, and particularly on the west of Ireland or some of your links courses where you're getting salt blow, you'd pick this up really quickly here, because the salt would show as a peak of salinity. So you'd be able to bury one of these maybe on an area that's affected, and you'd be able to see very quickly if you're getting salt deposition without actually being there. Not so much of an issue for us UK, Ireland, but on the continent, some areas they have very poor water quality with salt water contamination. And again, you'd be able to see if you're getting a salt build up in your soil very, very quickly. Interestingly for me, I think you can actually track the fate of fertilizers. So you fertilize the surface, and then the fertilizer will show on the Soil Scout whether it's moving down through the depths. So you can bury these at different depths and see how your fertilizer actually, how much of it actually moves down through your root zone. So I think it's going to be a really clever technology for the future. You know, it's not for everybody, it's not for everybody's budget, but it's really just to highlight how, you know, remote sensors are coming to play a role, I think, in our, whether it's golf or football. You know, looking just at some of the things I've talked about, we're just at the beginning of this road, and, you know, for me, a large part of it, you know, they all generate information, but it's actually using that information and communicating to your powers that be or to your punter. And for me, I think obviously, you know, remote sensors, but also we've seen remote mowers. I think they're going to become more and more commonplace. Now, okay, I've just talked about grass maintenance, but, you know, I've got one of the football pitches has fitted dew brushes to all his remote mowers. So not only are they going out and cutting, but they're taking the dew off. And you could see, you know, possibly a tie-up between disease management from those, you know, from the robotic mowers, but also from the data we're getting from weather stations. That data is going to allow us to develop disease models, and I'm sure, you know, Bayer, Syngenta, ICL, Delete, where applicable, are all working on disease prediction models, because we know climate's changing. We have less options. Well, particularly over here, we do. You're in a better position than we are in terms of fungicidal choice. But actually picking out, you know, when conditions are rife for disease on your golf course is going to be more of the issue. Irrigation, it's more or less an established technology. And I think environmental stewardship, you know, if we're able to show water companies, environmental companies that, you know, the regulators that actually, you know, what we're maintaining doesn't contribute nutrients to the environment, so we're not encouraging eutrophication of water systems, algal blooms, that kind of stuff. You know, again, that's where some of these remote sensors are going to be handy. And ultimately, you know, the job's going to be joining the dots. You know, at the moment, these are developing in isolation. You can see a situation where they're all linked, and so that helps us do all of these jobs. And I think it's really exciting. It doesn't replace people. It's just going to make our jobs more, our life more efficient, I think. So, you know, for me, that's hopefully a little look at some of the new developments in sensors, in robotic technology, and hopefully I can come back in a year's time and give you more experience of what I've shown you and some of the new adaptations. So thank you very much for listening. Over to you, Damien.
All right, thanks a million, Mark. Very good. Really appreciate all that. So a super job, and it all went well for your first time.
I'm sorry for not having my mask with me. So I can tell you on
that. Has anyone any questions, lads? Mark has shown a lot of stuff there.
The morning was lovely, and hopefully later on today.
One answer coming into me here from the chat, I see, so I'll ask that. What is the cost of the soil unit? So I presume.
Sorry, Damien, I missed that. What's the cost of the?
Someone out there, lads, who cutting across everybody.
Sorry for being here. Thanks. You're so good. See you then.
Simon, I think it's you from what I can hear. I recognize your voice. Okay, I think he has there maybe. So the question was, what is the cost of the Soil Scout unit? So I presume that's the, oh yeah, the Soil Scout units.
Yeah, I don't actually know, because literally we've only just begun trialing them, and I know they've just hired somebody in there. You know, they're doing a commercial rollout, but they actually gave us them to try to pick data up. So from, you know, unfortunately, I can't answer your question directly. I can probably point you the way of somebody that can from Soil Scout, but I'm not familiar with the actual cost. I'm sorry about
that. Oh, okay. Anyone else out there, lads, want to ask something in relation to it?
You can always drop us or Damien an email, or drop me an email if you've got you know, anything specifically on the Soil Scout thing. You know, if you want to drop that in an email, and I'll try and put you in touch with somebody who could give you an idea of cost.
Okay, no problem. Just from your own thinking and perspective of listening to that particular last slide that's still in front of everyone there, do you see a situation, Mark, where potentially you could have, you know, a weather station, for want of a better word, kind of more or less remotely talking to mowers, remotely talking to, you know, irrigation, obviously. And basically then you're kind of coming into work in the morning and you have the information as to whether, you know, you should cut, whether you should not cut, whether you need to irrigate, whether you don't need to irrigate, whether you need to spray, whether you don't need to spray. So it's nearly like, you know, I don't want to say a weather station tell you whether you can go out and cut or not, but you know what I mean, even ground conditions, like, you know, trafficability of areas, you know what I mean, if you have a sensor in the ground that's obviously gauging soil moisture, You know what I mean? Do you see that developing, as you're saying, joining the dots as to where this whole thing will go?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, with irrigation, you know, the irrigation companies often install weather stations on as part of their system, and you know, in some respects, they're doing that to help make the irrigation decisions. Some of them do forecasts for your location of predicted ET and weather conditions, and then theoretically you could irrigate from, you know, they automatically irrigate from that. In my experience, they're not very accurate at all yet, but you could easily see a situation where you could have a percentage of your ET programmed in, i.e. you're happy that if you're watering at say 60% of ET, that your greens are performing well. And so you could program it in, and then the weather station is measuring the ET and then deciding, and then you already have your inbuilt parameter and off it goes that evening. There's always going to be a human connection though, because you know, it's like one of the sites I go to, from sun up to midday, he only gets about, I'd say 20% of his ET. But from midday to sundown, he's on a hill and the winds get up in the summer and it's absolutely brutal sight. So he may only get 1.5 mil of ET loss in the morning, and then 5.5 mil during the afternoon on a really hot, blowy day in July, August. And then, you know, obviously you don't make a decision, you can't make a decision on the morning, you'd have to get all that data in, and then that night you'd make a decision on how much irrigation went on, or you'd have it programmed in. So I can see some connectivity easily between weather stations, and, you know, some of it's already there. I can see that only getting better. We've got grass growth prediction models with GDD and growth potential. Again, you know, you could see where you know, that's calculated automatically, and then that feeds the information to the mower, so it knows how quick the grass is growing, so it knows how many hours it's going to need to cut a certain area. Again, you could see that link up really straightforward. So yeah, I see, you know, the biggest challenge is going to be linking the technology so it's actually useful, and it's not replacing a human's management decisions, but it allows, you know, you can see some of the feedback from those Scandinavian lads. It's not doing them out of people, it's allowing them to get on and focus on other areas, because the decisions, they've already set up their technology to take care of, you know, lower maintenance areas that normally take a lot of looking after. You know, a rough mower, a semi-rough mower or fairway mower is not a cheap bit of gear.
Yeah. I've another one coming in on the chat. The chat seems to be more popular for people. How many sensors are needed per green to give a true reflection of conditions within that green? Can you hear me, Mark? Or are you after freezing? Are you there, Mark? Oh,
he froze.
Mark looks like he's froze there. He's gone. Looks like Mark has left the building. By the sounds of it. We'll just give him a minute and see if he comes back in relation to it. Not coming back there. Has anyone any other comments out there they'd like to make in relation to Mark's presentation, lads? Mark is gone, I think. Maybe his connection is after dropping.
How are you, Damien?
Well, Eamon, how's it going?
Good. Quick one.
Yeah.
We have a thing down in Kildalton here which is called the Decision Support System. We run that Vantage Pro 2, but we have it with the orchard. So we have 4 or 5 hectares of apples, and the data is collected, and then it's sent off to this guy in Belgium. And this guy runs it through a program, and then he sends it back. What would you say, kind of a scab risk and a powdery mildew risk back to us.
Yeah.
And basically there's a series of maps. I could probably find something there to kill 2 minutes while what's his name jumps back in. But literally it'll give you a window of kind of, I don't know, say Thursday to Friday, there's really high pressure, get your spray on before Wednesday. Now it's very specific to powdery mildew, and it's very specific to apple scab. But my question would have been, is there a decision support system for, I suppose, turf in Ireland? Anybody using one?
I don't know. Like, I suppose a lot of the companies have, like that Mark mentioned, like Headland, ICL, and they all have like weather information that they're sending out, and they're kind of saying, listen, this is going to be, for example, a disease pressure week. That's as much as I know, and I don't know if any of the rest of the lads have something more specific than that.
Damien, I know Mark is working on a microdocument algorithm, but they're proving very difficult because of the amount of the factors you have to factor in. You know, and Mark alluded, or he showed on his graphs there, you know, leaf wetness, temperature, humidity, and all of that. Nutrition, traffic, you know, plant health, stress. There's so much involved, and it's proving very difficult as yet. But I believe he's working away on it. And on the States, they use track nose models, dollar spot models, and things like that, and they're proving very accurate. But they're yet to come across here. So I'd have been curious to see where Mark with Headland is with his microdocument model.
Yeah, he's coming back in now.
So you can ask him there.
Are you back, Mark? I admitted him there now for a second. I think he's he's coming in here slowly but surely. Is he connecting to audio? So he is in relation to it. But so maybe Eamon, you'll put that same question to Mark now in a second. I'm just asking him to unmute because it's an interesting one. And how are you finding it, out of curiosity, down there, Eamon, in Kildare? Do you find it good, like? No, you need to unmute yourself, Eamon.
I do indeed, as usual. No, it's by a company called RIMPRO, and they have another thing called FastPro and FastPro Plus. But they also do scab coddling mott. They do all the different types of motts, and basically there's a series of, I suppose, yeah, they give you oviscide spray timings and larvicide spray timings and everything. So like our sensors down here, Greg, we have all the sensors that you spoke of, except for we don't have people walking on the apple trees, obviously, if you know what I mean. So there's no traffic, there's no anything like that, but it's still just as many sensors other than, I suppose, so that model maybe that what's his name is working on, Mark is working on. I might be able to apologies, Mark.
That's all right. I'm quite forgettable.
Just to let you know, Mark, there, while you were away,
everybody was slagging me brutally.
My computer. While you were away, by the way,
my computer just died, and then it sat there saying, "We are compiling your error codes," and then it sat there while I was just about to throw it out the window.
Right. Well, I'll introduce Eamon. He's chatting to you here now. Eamon's a sports turf lecturer down in Kildalton.
Right.
And he was asking a very interesting question in relation to sensors. I think you had asked, first of all, how many sensors are needed per green, Eamon, was it? To give
that wasn't me, no.
Oh, that wasn't you. That was someone else then. There was someone else on Eamon's iPhone.
Oh, no, I was just talking about decision support systems, and we've got a
Eamon
program.
will chat you on that there now, Mark.
Sorry, Mark, should be repeating myself to the rest of the guys, but we have a program called RIMPRO, which works on apple scab and basically modeling for powdery mildew in the orchard and stuff like that. I was just wondering, was there any turf-specific decision support systems that are out there? I know like a lot of the tillage guys would also use that type of modeling as well, but I think Greg was saying that you were working on something, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think lots of people are working on, you know, the one model that's out there at the moment from the States, you know, the Smith Kearns have a dollar spot prediction model, which is based on a 5-day average of humidity, and you put your minimum maximum temperatures and your humidity in, and it chucks out a probability of dollar spot. And I know some lads who are using that over here and on the continent, actually not just for dollar spot, but more for microdochium. And it's reasonably accurate, but I find a 5-day average of humidity is quite a wide-ranging factor to make a decision. You know, for me, microdocium in our studies needs 6 hours of high humidity to go from being, you know, a small lesion to being very aggressive. And so it may come down to the nature of the beast, but I know a lot of companies are working on microdocium disease modeling. I'm in year 4, and every year I'm finding out new things, areas where we haven't forecast microdocium and we've got it, or vice versa. So it's a real tough nut to crack, but I think, you know, it's coming, and those decision support systems will be here. You know, I know they're in the, you know, crop industry. I work with a guy in Germany on vineyards, and he uses, you know, both for moth populations and then powdery mildew again. But again, they still have issues with, particularly on gradient sites where conditions in one part are non-conducive to disease and conditions in the other part are. And the same's true on a golf course. We've all got greens where we, you know, that are more sensitive to disease. They might be shady greens, less airflow, dew stays on longer. More open greens sometimes get less, in fact, sometimes get more. And so that's one part of the disease modeling that's quite tricky, because you've got to try and take into account not just where the golf course is located, but almost the dynamics. And it's a tricky one. It's a real tough nut, but it is coming. You know, we're working with some courses where we give them a forecast at the beginning of the week, what we think's coming in terms of dew and disease, and then they're feeding back, and we are, you know, we're getting better. And some of them are able to maintain those surfaces with less fungicides, less applications, because they're just timing the ones they do make more efficiently.
Okay, I'll go back to the other Eamon who I can see is still on the call. Eamon asked Mark, how many sensors are needed per green to give a true reflection of conditions within that green?
That's a really good question. Really good question. From a remote sensor point of view, you know, that's, you're in the subject of, you know, even if you are using something like a Pogo and you mapped your golf green, you'd see a lot of variability in soil moisture levels across your green. And so, you know, you'd almost imagine a situation where you'd need to put a lot of sensors in, but the reality for me is you'd probably narrow it down to the areas that are the most problematic for you from a maintenance point of view. You know, areas that dry out the quickest and then thin out, and then you get, you know, stress and maybe anthracnose, maybe moss there. So you could even cut it down. You know, you can even just have one sensor in a green on a problem green, and that one might be a good indicator for the rest of them. You know, so every course is going to be different. And obviously, if you're in a remote sensor situation, you've got the issue of, if you're burying sensors, the more you bury, the more maintenance issues you have, because you can't afford to put a Procore tine straight through the middle of one of these, or Vertidrain. So it's a difficult question to answer. I'd say, you know, in a soil moisture, temperature, humidity, salinity point of view, one sensor on a green gives you a lot of information. And if that's an indicator green, that one sensor could actually give you enough information to cover maybe 50–60% of the other greens on your course. Tricky to say.
Okay, fair enough, fair point. That was from Eamon Maguire, by the way. Thanks for that, Eamon. I see you after coming
in. Thanks, Eamon. If I knew that question was coming, I wouldn't have reconnected.
Yeah. Okay then. It's 3 o'clock there now, lads. Has anyone else that'd like to ask before I wrap things up, lads? No, I don't think so. Well, I have got this one recorded, so, and I will be putting up the series that we've done so far before Christmas, or the last 4, I should say. So on the website for everyone to go back and look on as well. So you'll be able to see. Obviously, Mark, if you're okay with that, we'll do that.
Yeah, that's grand. That's grand.
And we'll do it that way. The CPD code as well for today. if anyone wants to claim their CPD credits in relation to today's webinar, it's 61 capital B 4 capital B 75. I'll just repeat that: 61 capital B 4 capital B 75. So that's CPD code, I should say, for today. And I think that wraps it up. Mark, listen, thanks a million.
Okay, I'd just like to say, hope everybody has a good Christmas and a safe one. And maybe we'll come back to some level of normality, whatever the hell that is, at some point next year.
Okay. Thanks a million, Mark, and happy Christmas to you as well, you and yours as well in relation to it. And lads, listen, thanks a million to everyone for joining.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it. And we're on stream again in January in relation to the actual webinars itself. So you'll get plenty of notes across email and social media in relation to that for the new year. So we'll chat to you then. All right. Thanks a million, lads. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed it.
Cheers, Damien. Bye.
Cheers, Mark. Thanks a million. No matter. Bye. Bye.